To many of us furries in the world, young and old, the fandom and the content it produces can be a form of escape. I make YouTube videos to share my insights and you guys watch them to pass the time. And that cycle is repeated with many other content creators and many other viewers as well. Like that, this behavior can echo other types of social practices that are worth talking about. Oh hey, this is Xylee the Fox and welcome to a brand new video. This fandom, as in any other internet subcultures, embodies a way to engage in a fantasy world with conjured characters. It works as a means to forget the menial and visit day-to-day events which were as down had we not had a speck of our own place to call a world. In other words, the furry community keeps a big portion of us sane in a world that can lose it in the spur of a moment, and which is becoming more and more challenging and divided every single day. However, the furry fandom, as one sphere of society, is not and will never be exempt from society's common and by extension bigger challenges. We see that every day. You log onto Twitter and you see drama. You read news articles and there are sites, there are opinions, there is a personal judgment. By extension, all of the broader social issues will be reflected in this smaller internet community. For example, like bigotry, like social status, or even addictions. I'm not fully convinced that anyone could put together a script or even a social media post on this matter without relying on conjecture and therefore a subjective observation. However, I love to be as objective and critical as this poses one of the most hotly debated topics among furries so far. When addressing serious matters, certain words carry weights far beyond their literal definitions. In the past, words like war, like crisis, or terrorism were fueled by a collective sense of fear. Today, we face a different kind of linguistic weight, the loaded signifier, I would say. In semiotics, a sign consists of two parts. The signifier, which embodies the sounds and images of a word, like the lexicon dog, and the signified, which stands for the mental concept of a four-legged canine. Linguistics tells us that language is a social contract. We agree on what words mean, but contracts can be renegotiated. Today, the signified attached to certain words has become so heavy with social judgment that the word itself can provoke a conflict before the conversation even begins. In the furry fandom, we are currently seeing this metamorphosis with the word addictions, primarily, among many others. Since the word addiction embodies many points to discuss, let's take the mostly associated one, which is alcohol. I've always been uncomfortable with how alcohol is lumped in with other illicit drugs. Yeah, we know that booze is a legal recreational substance, yet it is the primary problem that undermines the fun and games nature of the community. At a convention, the physical risks are obvious. Dehydration and heat strokes are dangerous enough, but they become life-threatening when you add the fidgeting part into the equation. There have been records of this happen in many conventions, which often make me wonder what the social risks are in the whole situation. Social risks are indeed more subtle. Many use alcohol to lower inhibitions, using it as a social lubricant, let's say, to perform interactions they otherwise couldn't. Yet, because the fandom is at the same time a sanctuary for those dealing with anxiety, sometimes depression, or in other cases, neurodivergence, this creates a volatile environment which could hinder these people's feelings of safety inside the community. When drinking leads to blurred boundaries in crowded spaces, you know, a bad night doesn't just result in a hangover, it can fundamentally shatter a person's sense of belonging, resulting in uncomforting looks, negative memories, and you know, if you push it to the limits, you can even trigger a past trauma. This is where the meaning problem reaches its peak, I would say, because we have resignified the word addiction to mean moral failure or social exile sometimes, and therefore we've made it impossible to talk about it. When we label these behaviors as addictions, the heavy stigma causes the community to retreat into defensiveness rather than seeking actually a solution. We aren't just dealing with a substance problem, we are dealing also with a vocabulary problem. By being afraid of the word, we lose the ability to address the behavior, leaving the most vulnerable members of our community at risk while we argue over a label. On the other hand, the recreational level often serves as a gateway to substances that carry far more weight than just a bottle of spirits. If you spend enough time on furry social media leading up to a major convention, you'll see the hardcore partying culture front and center. This digital paper trail leads to an uncomfortable observation. Drug use isn't just an outlier. It is actually visible and sometimes celebrated subculture within the furry fandom. While most conventions maintain strict no-drug policies in public spaces, the private room party tells a different story. I get the appeal. There's a desire to push the fantasy of the fandom to its limits, to find that, spice that makes the weekend feel legendary. But does the furry fandom actually have a drug issue, or is it just efficient at documenting one? We have to ask ourselves, why is the recreational not enough? For some, the fursuits, the arts, and even the hotel lobby chats are the peak of the experience, at least that's for me. But for a growing subculture within the fandom, there is a drive to make the fantasy more visceral. When you're already wearing a secondary version of yourself like a fursuit can be, the threshold for what feels exciting tends to shift. In private room parties, the use of these substances is often framed as a way to enhance the magic or to reach a level of sensory extremeness that the mundane world sometimes can't provide. Whether it's hallucinogens to enhance the room party or stimulants to keep said party going for like 72 hours straight, these substances are used to curate an experience that already feels larger than life. The danger here isn't just the legality, it's the escalation that it might get. When the fandom is your primary source of joy, there is a desperate pressure to make every convention the best one yet. And as a consequence of this need of dopamine, we end up normalizing behaviors that are not acceptable and which embody a bigger social issue. However, if we see schools making campaigns to prevent the use of illegal substances, we also see public messages on how this is bad for us. Is it really a problem of the furry fandom, or is the furry fandom a mirror of a broader social issue? If we zoom out, we realize the fandom doesn't exist in isolation, but rather it is a microcosm. Claiming that the furry fandom is a community where drug abuse is encouraged or not frowned upon is an irresponsible understatement. You see, when we make general claims like this one, we fall in a similar paradox as the one that suggests that all furries are about adult content or that all furries are queer. Generalizing is indeed a very common issue when we talk about these topics, and by observing these figures provided by Fur Science, we can see that these generalizations are sometimes wrong. But where do they come from? Well, basically from what we see recurrently appearing on social media. If we see something constantly pop up on our screens, it tends to become a reality, and therefore we assume it's the only possible truth. I believe this is what the problem is with furries and addictions. During furry conventions, we see so many pictures and so much on the partying that we wrongly assume the convention was only that, when in reality it might have been not the case. And if we talk about addictions, we should also stop talking about furries and substances, but rather furries as a mirror of a bigger picture. At the beginning of the video, it was said that the fandom is an extension of society, and as a consequence, it is a small, concentrated mirror of the broader world with its own issues and debates. The party culture we see at conventions is a direct reproduction of the club scenes in movies, the festival culture, and even the nightlife of our cities. We aren't inventing these issues, we are simply hosting them in a space where everyone happens to have ears and tails. When we see a drug issue in the fandom, we are currently seeing the symptoms of a global loneliness epidemic and a societal lack of healthy coping mechanisms. We are a mirror, and sometimes that mirror shows us things that we would rather ignore. This brings us to a deeply personal realization. While loneliness is a thing we often want to avoid, we can find that the wish to avoid it sometimes takes us down paths that can later haunt us. Peer pressure is something our schools, at least from my experience as a teacher, often tell us to avoid when dealing with others our age trying to get us to do the cool things when we're younger. We are usually taught that this is a problem of the teen years, but the reality is that peer pressure doesn't have an expiration date. When we're rubbing elbows with our fellow furry friends at meetups or parties, we find that everyone has different relations with different substances. I did it when I was younger, and I would be lying if I said I didn't drink a glass from time to time. We can't escape something that comes from the outside. And for those who don't want to appear rude or feel like an outsider in a group where substance use is treated as a social normalcy, it is terrifyingly easy to be roped in by a sense of social obligation. In the end, you want to stay in the room. You want to be part of the inner circle of the party guys. But at the very end of the day, this behavior will take you down a path you will struggle to come back from. So, in conclusion, I would like to ask the following. Does the furry fandom have an addiction issue? Well, I would say that not really. I'd say it's just good at showing how easy it is to go down a path. On social media, you will see that partying is a mixture of both drinking and smoking, but it's also sensible to say that so does the world. The difference is that we call ourselves a fandom, which implies a level of care and community that the outside world often lacks. If we want to keep the sanctuary safe, we have to stop being afraid of the meaning problem that I talked about before and address an issue when it appears. We have to stop treating the word addiction as a death sentence for someone's reputation and start treating it as a call and an opportunity to help someone else. Understanding that even if the problem comes from the outside, we have the power to make it stop within our own borders. By raising awareness, by looking out for the friend who's partying a little too hard, and by decoupling our social worth from our level of intoxication, who we hang out with or who we sleep with, we can protect the fantasy without losing ourselves to the reality of the substances. We furries are here for the escape. I totally agree on that. And it is wonderful to dress up and enjoy a fandom without judgmental eyes. But let's make sure we are escaping to a community that can actually support us, not just a chemical that makes us forget we are alone, without minding the surroundings we might affect. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's video, and if you have, please like and share this video with a friend. This topic is very hard to address, but I am sure more than one has something to say on the matter. For those, I'll be glad to read your opinions in the comments. Do you think the fandom has a big issue with substances? You know, I'll be reading your answers. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Stay safe, look out for each other, and I'll see you all in my next video. Take good care of yourselves, everyone. Meow!